I use them every day for my personal life as well as for my work. And I came to mindfulness also through another crisis in my life. My wife died of cancer and my business went bankrupt. And I went to walk what in Europe is a famous walk called the Camino de Santiago, this walk that people used to do since the 11th century without any, when there was no cars, no infrastructure. They would walk from their house for hundreds and thousands of kilometers to get to this point at the end of Spain, right next to the coast. And then they would have to walk all the way back. Well, I didn't have to, I was able to do it in I did 15 days, but at the end of this walk, I felt two things that I hadn't felt before. One was compassion, enormous sense of compassion for everybody and for myself. And the other was a sense of insight, the thing that sometimes comes from meditation and mindfulness, a kind of touching wisdom that's in us somehow, that's in us, it's in nature, it's all around. And I asked people, do I have to walk 30 kilometers for the rest of my life in order to keep this wisdom and this compassion? And they said, no, you could try meditation. And so I started to experience meditation, and I did it with the Vipassana, which is a Buddhist tradition, but you don't have to be Buddhist to do it. Just like mindfulness, it has a secular fundamentals, and that has led me into not only doing, as Jacques was saying, mindfulness for myself, but thinking, how can I take mindfulness out and share it with others? Because it brought me such a lot of things, and I'm sure it could bring other people a lot of things. So I've prepared a slide presentation today, and I'm going to ask Jag and his team just to start us on the first slide. So there you have the logo of the Presencing Institute, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the Presencing Institute, which is the institute in Boston, Massachusetts at MIT that today represents the umbrella of what is Theory U. And Theory U, I asked some of the people that were here before you arrived, how many had heard of Theory U, and almost nobody. So it's very popular in the States, very popular in Europe, some in Latin America, where I first heard about it because I used to live in Latin America. And I only came across it in 2015. And it's fairly new. And it's based on, next slide, please. It's based really on it's based on systems of social awareness. So I'll come to that in a few minutes, but I want to start the presentation talking about the word stuck, because in 2017, I arrived in Portugal with the intention of introducing mindfulness into the education system. Now, why would one want mindfulness in the education system? Well, some of you have experienced mindfulness at the university level. And my idea was to try and introduce mindfulness already at the children's level, at the primary school and the secondary school. Not so much like you do, sitting for, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, but already with children, one does exercises like putting the hand on the stomach and imagining, one even puts some leaves on the stomach and the child then feels the leaves going up and down. So their focus is directed to one place and it becomes linked to breathing. And mindfulness in education is an important tool, as I'll explain later in the presentation, because mindfulness, one thing it is absolutely proven to do is to help alleviate stress in two ways. First, to recognize stress is there, and then through activating the parasympathetic nervous system, when we breathe in a certain way, we're able to reduce the body's flight and fight symptoms, the increased heartbeat, the increased blood pressure, increased temperature, and come back to a place where we're not stressed. And why is that important in education? Because children who are stressed, maybe because they were bullied or the mother's sick or the brother's something, aren't able to focus on the lesson. The studies have showed that up to 97% of the time, a student's attention is not in the class. So how can they learn? And for teachers, it's very important because in the school system, there's a lot of stress in the classroom. You're trying to teach in a specified amount of time, get all the students to a certain level. Some students don't want to learn, some do. They're throwing papers, this, that, and the other. And a teacher gets stressed. And we all know, I think, that when you get stressed, it's a little bit like when you don't have sleep, or if you've eaten too much, or if you live in a country where they drink alcohol, you've had a little bit too much to drink, you can't function optimally. So mindfulness in education is important. And in 2017, I came to Portugal and I organized the first conference of mindfulness in education. Everybody that was a teacher of mindfulness, of meditation, all the people involved in schools who were interested in the subject came together, and we started a movement. And 2 years later, leading in a way that movement, I found myself stuck. Okay, and stuck is a really important word in Theory U, and it's a really important word in life, because what Theory U teaches us is that only when you become aware of the situation that you are in, can you begin the process of getting out of it. And I mean, many of you can think, you know, a marriage or a relationship you are in, you come to a point and there's a certain realization this is not working for some reason. And it's only somehow at that moment, usually married, and that's another important part of Theory U, with no longer being a victim, but trying to take positive action to create the future, the next step that you want to see. Now, sometimes the next step is you want to go back and be with the same person that has just told you they don't love you or cheated on you or something like that. That's probably not going to work. But at some point, you can begin to create that future where you step out and you begin to have a life of your own in a new way. And that is a little bit what Theory U is about. So what do we do when we're stuck? Thank you for moving it. So it's an awareness-based, it focuses on awareness-based systems change. You cannot change a system unless you transform the consciousness. And you cannot transform the consciousness unless you make a system see and sense itself. So if I want to go into the schools and I want the schools to understand a little bit how mindfulness could help them, I first have to help the schools to look, and the education system to look and to say, it's not working quite as well as we'd like. It's working. Yeah, we educate kids, but the teachers are stressed, the parents are not happy, the students are complaining, the administrators are complaining. And if what I'm saying sounds at all familiar to you, and it should, because any system in the world, any education system in the world today, bar none, I would say, maybe a few exceptions, if you, public one, if you go in it and you help them to look at themselves, they're going to say something like, we're stressed, we're suffering, we're fed up. Okay, and there are all kinds of signals of that, and I can give you some identify some of them in the Q&A. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the Theory U is called Theory U because the process is a U, as you can sort of see here, and it has 5 steps. So the first is what's called co-initiating. So a group of people come together and they choose a certain intention. So when you're stuck, the word that I said before, the tendency we have is to sit there and freeze. You know, I don't know what to do. And I, in 2019, 2 years after starting this movement, was stuck. I had tried everything, bringing people together, forming work groups, committees, and nothing seemed to be working. And the education system, somebody, a minister of education in Portugal told me that if he had fallen asleep 30 years ago and woke up today, everything would seem different. Hospitals, you go into a hospital 30 years ago or 100 years ago, and you go there today, wow, numbers and, you know, screens, and you can save patients, and the age of mortality has changed, and the success rate and the introduction of new techniques have all improved. You go to a typical school 100 years ago, 30 years ago, and today, and arguably, I'm not talking about private schools, public schools, not that much has changed. There's a blackboard, there's a teacher, now there's some computers where that's possible, and the students are all sitting in rows just as they did before, and they're learning geography and they're learning history as separate subjects. And there is something else out there, and I know because I'm involved with JAG in what's looking at holistic education. So I was stuck, and my colleagues were stuck. in some of the schools where we'd managed to get mindfulness accepted by the headmaster and the director, suddenly they said, we don't want any more contemplative studies in our school. And not because the teachers didn't like it, not because the parents didn't like it, but because it's new, and new is uncertain. Mindfulness has only been in education in schools since about the end of the 90s, and it's only really begun to take off since 2011. And there's still a lot of research having to be done, and it's proven for certain things, like I said, stress, but it's not yet proven clearly for all the other areas. There's some major studies going on right now. One of them, the principal one in the UK, called Myriad, financed by the Wellcome Trust, which is a big pharmaceutical company. And they're going to look and produce really scientific results over large samples and over large periods of time, sort of 5, 6, 7 years of following these kids through and saying, you know, here, these ones were the test case, these ones did mindfulness, here the teachers did mindfulness, the students did mindfulness, what happened? Yeah. So we were stuck, and we decided, let's use Theory U, and Theory U has a special program. Every year you can take Theory U classes online. There's 1 or 2 programs every year. It lasts about 3 or 4 months. It's meeting once or twice a week. It's about 3 or 4 hours work a week. So it's like a course basically, and it's administered as a university course. And sometimes the course I was on, there was 70,000 people that took the course. Now there's a little bit less. So we decided to use what Theory U calls a social lab, which is a group of people. We were about 20 of us, all of us teachers, directors of schools, people trying to get mindfulness in education, everybody linked in some way to education. So we took that pool. There was a director of the homeschooling in Portugal. There was a director of an alternative school, director of a private school, people from public schools. And many of them hadn't done Theory U. So we were training them in Theory U, in this process of the U, at the same time that we were going in and looking at the education system in Portugal and trying to say, how do we get in? What is the path? It's something that I've learned now at my 57 years. What is the path that welcomes me? Because too often in life, we try to go down the path that's blocked, that has thorns, that has padlocks, but we want to go down that path. And we put all of our energy into breaking that, to go down that way. And then next to that, there's another path that's waiting for us. It's saying, please come here. I want you to walk down here. And we're like, oh, that's not good enough. I want something better. I want this path. So we got a group of people together, and the first thing to do in the U process is to uncover a common intent. So our common intent was, we would like to go into the education system, and we would like to understand how we can take mindfulness as a tool to enable flourishing within that system. And with that in mind, it took us several weeks of discussing to really align what we wanted to do over a certain period. And this U can happen more or less quickly, but when everybody has a family and a job and school and this and that, it ended up being a process over several months. The next step in the U, which is very important, is to take the camera, which is facing outwards in life, we're looking out at what happens, and turn it around, turn it inwards. What, at the same time that I'm seeing what's happening outside, what is happening inside? How am I feeling? And because Theory U is an awareness-based system, it uses many of the same processes that we inadvertently use when we meditate, when we practice mindfulness. For instance, one of the things that Theory U teaches you, first of all, is how to listen actively. Many times when we listen, we are doing what Theory U calls downloading. So I'm listening to Jag talk and I'm going, oh, of course he has that opinion because he's on the far right and, you know, he's conservative and I'm not even listening to him. I'm trying to reinforce my own beliefs, what I already have in my head, what I've already read and assimilated. And I don't take the opportunity, standing and sitting with Jag, to really understand his views. How did he come to this opinion? What else is there? What else can I know about him? Let me get all that information. Because when I leave this meeting, I can leave it in one of two ways. I leave it and I don't really know what Jag thinks. I've just reinforced what I think. Or I've listened to Jag. I've incorporated and assimilated and taken from him all that knowledge, intelligence, feeling, emotion, history. And I can now take bits of it out. I can integrate it with what I've already know, and I can grow my knowledge, my experience, my understanding has a chance to grow. So that's one of the first fundamental parts of Theory U. Really listening. Okay, and mindfulness has that too. Really listening, but mindfulness is and Theory U to so it says listen inside. Don't just listen to the other person. What are you doing while you're listening to that person? So active listening is important. Generative dialogue is important in Theory. So I'm listening to you. You transmit something to me. And the first thing I say, oh, yeah, I had that experience too. You're not allowing the time for the information that's being shared with you, the experience that's being shared with you, to really sink in. You're not listening. So one of the things that Theory do is just give it time. Nobody needs the solution that, oh, I've got a solution for you. I know what the idea of, oh, yes, I've got it. Please. No, just allow the thing to sit for a moment. Sense how it feels. And oftentimes we would find ourselves not giving a solution, but saying, what you just told me makes me feel a lot of sadness or a lot of joy or a lot of, I remember something that happened in my life and it's coming up now. And I feel empathy with what you're saying. And the other thing that Theory U does is it encourages you to take what the last person was saying and weave with it, not change the subject because while that person was talking, you were thinking about something else, but take what they were saying and try to build on it. So as people are talking in the group, you're actually weaving a fabric, you're weaving something. And we call that collective intelligence. It's not unique to Theory U, but it's very important because in collective intelligence, you come with your issue in life. It can be I'm not getting along in my relationship, or I have trouble with my kids, or my job, or my project, and you share this with a group of people. And you might say, I have to make a decision about which house to buy tomorrow. And you share the complexity of the decision making. And the people come back to you and they say the same thing, not giving you solutions, but it makes me feel sad what you're going through. Wow, that feels good. Somebody's understanding what I'm going through. And then someone else might say, can I make a suggestion? Yes, please. I would like you to make a suggestion. Why don't you try this? And by the end of your discussion, if it's done in a way that really involves listening and generative dialogue, there's absolutely no way you don't come out richer. Even if you continue to view the same choice you thought you were going to make before, you've listened to other opinions, other perspectives, other choices, and you've come to where you now think you could go. And when we worked in this group together, we experienced that. We experienced something that I would call flow, which means that we never wanted to take decisions without first consulting in the group and hearing these opinions, this collective intelligence. And we got to be so confident of our colleagues that if somebody came in, a stranger, and said, what's your project about? One person could answer, and then we would allow them to answer for us, even if it wasn't the same way we would be speaking or describing the project, because we realized that's my brother, that's my sister, and they're part of my family, and they're explaining what our family is like, what our family is doing, and that's okay. And I don't have to react to it or think, oh my God, what they're saying is so stupid, or I wish they would shut up, or things that we often notice ourselves doing when we're in groups and other people are talking. So this U process has two main parts. The bottom part is sensing, to go into the system, and either you are sensing it or the people you're with are sensing it. In our case, it was our group sensing. And when you get to the bottom of the U, you do a whole series of exercises. That whole process took about 3 months to get to the bottom of the U. You start to collect the information and you start to go into a phase of silence. Now, earlier I said we were in a situation of stuck. Often when people are stuck, what do? They think that if they think long enough, if they analyze in their brain, you can almost hear the tools in there going zzz, they're going to find the solution. And sometimes one does come to a solution after 1 day, 2 days, 1 week of analysis. But another way is to go into silence, is to allow, maybe silence can be a walk or working in the garden or playing the piano, but we calm the mind. We allow the agitation, the monkey's mind, the same way we do in mindfulness and meditation, to quiet a little bit. And when it quiets, it can hear other things. It can hear other voices. I'm not saying that in your head, all of a sudden, somebody takes a microphone and goes, oh, here, I'm here. I'm the other part that's inside of you. No, I'm saying that you can allow yourself with a breath, this kind of to perhaps see something in a different way. The same way that if somebody comes to you and they're rude to you, you can either react and be rude back, go to hell, or you can take a breath and maybe say, I'm sorry, you seem to be angry. Is there something that I can do to help you? It's completely different ways of responding. One is a reaction and the other is a choice. And Theory U is very much about qualities of leadership, and having studied many, many leadership situations since the 50s through a long series of noted academics, they really came to the conclusion that what made outstanding leaders stand out was this ability to not act from a victim passive point of view. You did this to me, I feel angry, I'm now angry, so I'm going to react. But really to accept what's happening on the outside, look what's happening on the inside, the same way we do in meditation or mindfulness, and choose to act from a place of perhaps a slightly greater principle. I'm not going to punch this person in the face. I'm simply going to walk away, or I'm going to tell this person they've been very rude and hurt my feelings. It's very different, but it's a little split second of breath, of breathing, of calming. And as one comes out of this one goes into the phase of prototyping, of taking what one sensed in the system and looking at possibilities that could possibly bring the system to a healthier place. And this is what we did in 2019, this group of 20 people, with Theory U and mindfulness in education. If we can go to the next slide, please. So here I ask, why would one want mindfulness in education? And I've already mentioned a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is that we want to be able to deal with stress within the system. So we know that the teachers have stress. We know that students have stress, and we know that neither the student nor the teacher functions well with stress. And we know that, yes, if you go and play in the playground, if the teacher has, lots of breaks to be quiet, that will also help. But we know specifically that if students and teachers integrate some type of breathing exercises, mindfulness exercises into their schedule, that this will help the education system. Teachers' stress will go down, they can teach better. Students' stress will go down, they can pay more attention. But getting mindfulness into the education system is proving to be a huge challenge. Now, it is relatively new, as I said, from 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It is making very big inroads, particularly in private education, where private schools compete with each other. They charge a lot of money to their clients, the families, the parents, and they have to show that they're adopting the best practices. So they say, oh, we have yoga for the kids and we have mindfulness for the kids. But in other places, the parents say, no, yoga, that's Hindu. No, we don't want that here. We're Christian, or we're Muslim, or we're Sikh, for instance. And then another one says, oh, meditation, that's Buddhism. No, we don't want that. The beautiful thing about mindfulness is that it's designed from its very core to be secular. In other words, not to be religious. It's more about mental health than spirituality. It can lead to somebody having insights, feeling more passionate, wanting to be a better human, wanting to go out and change the world. Yes. And when people go and teach mindfulness in companies, they say to the boss who's paying for the bill, you should know that some of your employees, after learning mindfulness and practicing mindfulness, might actually decide that working for your company is not making them happy. They might quit the next day. So that might happen. But even so, we have big challenges getting mindfulness into the education system for several reasons. The Ministry of Education wants evidence-based, and that evidence is there, it's coming, but it's not yet there, and it's not yet enough for many of the ministries of education to say, okay, this goes in and we do it everywhere. Some countries are more advanced than others. The UK is the most advanced country right now in terms of implementing mindfulness in education, and they're almost at the point of mandating it in all public schools. They're trialing it now in 370 schools, public schools, and the British Parliament, half the members of the British Parliament, more than half of the members of the British Parliament have done a course in mindfulness. It's really beginning to penetrate British society. In addition to the Ministry of Education that wants proof of evidence of it working, we have administrators at the schools that have so many things in their palette, and every day somebody comes to them and says, we have this solution for your education and for your teachers, for your students. So introducing something else, even though that would make their teachers and perhaps the whole ecosystem of their school healthier, is resisted. And we've seen that having the administrator or head teacher of a school behind the implementation is absolutely key. If that doesn't happen, then the success rate for introducing mindfulness into the schools goes way down. Parents can also be a factor of resistance. No, I don't want my kids to do mindfulness. I've heard some bad things about it, or it's against my beliefs or whatever. So when we do manage to get to teachers, we find also another set of problems, because the teachers themselves, how should I say this? Mindfulness is to the mind what exercise is to the body. So it's a way, if you don't do it, it doesn't really bring you any benefits. And the normal way that mindfulness is brought into schools is mindfulness teachers come in and they sit down with the teachers, and they try to give them a 16-week course with 2 hours a week, and every day the school teacher should practice 30 or 40 minutes. There's almost a zero chance that happens. First, because teachers, to find 2 hours in the week to dedicate to listening about mindfulness, you'd be very lucky, maybe an hour. To get them to do 30 or 40 minutes of home practice, not many do it. And they need credits. If you don't give them a credit, most teaching systems work on some sort of credit. And if you get more credits, you go up in seniority. So if your course doesn't have credits, they don't want to take it. And then even if they learn it and they do the practice and they do everything right, which many of them do, and many of them get the benefit, and many say, wow, there's a before and after to this experience. I'm feeling totally different, or seeing things totally different than before, controlling my stress, identifying my stress, I'm happier, I'm whatever. They come back from their course into a school environment where there isn't necessarily a room where they can go and sit and be quiet. The other teachers maybe say, oh, mindfulness. There isn't a general supportive environment for this to come back into the school. So overall, there is a certain kind of resistance, a certain kind of steep hill that we have to climb up to make this happen. So if we can go to the next slide, please. In 2019, we decided with this group, we're going to investigate and we're going to try and understand this system and try to feel the system from the inside. Can we go to the next slide? Sorry, I don't know who's managing. So there we go. So that's Mr. Peter Sellers looking for the Pink Panther. So he has the same last name as I do with a slight difference of spelling. So that's me. And this next slide says that we're going to go with our microscope and we're going to go into the education system in Portugal. That's what we wanted to do. And we wanted to sense it. Okay, so Presencing is the name of the institute that today, the Presencing Institute that manages Theory U. And the word presencing comes from two words, present and sensing. So it's looking right now, here, forget what happened in the past, forget what's going to happen in the future, what's going on right now. Next slide, please. So Theory U gives us several different tools. One of them's called 3D mapping. One of them is called 4D mapping. And the most important one, the one that I think I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about today, is the interviews that we ended up doing with different members of the education community. And to do that, the first step that you do is you map out the stakeholders in the system. So this is in Portuguese, but I'll make a few translations just to clarify for you some of the stakeholders. So in an education system, which could also be your university, but we were looking more at private and secondary schools, you have parents, students, teachers, administrators. Those are 4 on this long list. But then you have many, many other actors in the education system. You have civic organizations, religious organizations, the ministry, the municipality, parents associations, people who've dropped out. Because what's very good with Theory U is they want to also take into consideration not only those that are succeeding in the system, but those who aren't succeeding. Because oftentimes, it's by looking at those who aren't succeeding that we learn answers and clarity about some of the things that are not working in the system. You've got social workers, you've got the press, you've got counselors, you've got psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, researchers. So all of these people are on this list and more, and they all are stakeholders. They form part of the ecosystem. And when you want to change a system, you can't just go and talk to the parents. You can't just go and talk to the teachers. You can't just go and talk to the parents and teachers. You need to reach out and touch all the people that are going to be affected by the system. So we have Theory U that says, we're going to give you tools with which to do this. And just as I was saying before, when we're stuck, we tend to think we can analyze ourselves out of the situation. Well, what is analysis? It's lots of words. It's what we do in most 99% of the days. We process thoughts and words. So one of the things Theory U tries to do is to have us feel the system with less words. So we use 4D, which is a group of people, in our case, our 20 people, who meet in a room, and each of us will take on the role of one of the main stakeholders in the system, and we'll do a constellation. In other words, we'll position ourselves in relation to one another, and we will take a certain attitude or position. How do I feel as the Minister of Education? Where do I want to stand in relation to the parents, in relation to the children, in relation to the teachers? And what's the attitude I have towards them? What are the words that I feel coming out of my mouth towards it? And we observe the system, and we create a present system. This is how the system is mapped now. And then once we have recorded and photographed and noted what each person is feeling, we invite them to shift to a second mapping, which is a mapping where they would feel more comfortable than where they felt in the first. And slowly over 5 or 10 minutes, people move and they come to a final position and they say how they feel in that second position. And if any of you have done systemic or family constellations, you'll be very familiar with this. It's not a science. Somebody who's very Cartesian, somebody who's very, maybe a psychologist or a psychiatrist might say, oh, no, but that, Einstein, not Einstein, Jung or whatever. Well, Jung was actually very much for the collective unconscious and what can emerge out of looking at things which are not necessarily Cartesian spoken, just watching and observing different movements, energies, how do things work. So we do this with 3D, which is with sort of Legos and so on. We do it with 4D. And all of these things begin to give us information about the system, about how it is now. And usually it's very easy for everybody to agree on how is it now? What's the relationship? Well, the parents are a bit far from the school because they're not really getting involved, and the ministry is on top of the school because it's telling everyone what to do, and the teachers are frustrated. And then they go to a second system where the ministry's we've moved the ministry off the schools because we think that way the schools have more liberty to decide what they want to do, and the teachers have been brought closer to the parents because we think they should speak to each other more, and the students we've put in the center because that's where they feel happiest, and so on. Some people think, oh, that's all hocus pocus. Other people think, wow, that's interesting. You're bringing other nonverbal forms of observation of a system into being. And these systems have been tested and tried, and they're very, very useful and helpful. I can speak from personal experience. But what I'm going to talk to you about now, before we go to the breakout, let's go back quickly to the previous slide, is I'm going to talk to you about the interview process. So when we were going out to interview, what we said to our 20 participants is pick a couple of people you know or you want to get to know that are on this list of stakeholders and go and meet them and talk to them. And, if you feel you want to record it, if they're happy to record it or take notes or just get your impression, come home and make the notes. And we're all going to meet in a few weeks' time. And we're going to share the information about the whole system. What did we hear when we went out to have these interviews? But the challenge was this, and we're going to do a small exercise now so that you can understand a little bit, not only what was our challenge, but also how we will use Theory U to address it. If I ask all of you now, and I'm actually going to ask you, if you look at the next slide, please. Okay, so everyone has an opinion. So if we went out and we went to all these people who said, what do you think of the school system now? What do you think of the education system now? We would get back a lot of noise. It's the teacher's fault. Oh, it's the parents' fault. Oh, the students are lazy. And you get so much noise back that you get no clear direction. And you also get people talking a lot from the head. I read last week, I heard on the news that this and this and this, and so I think this. And we wanted to reach them in another place. And I want to do a short exercise with you that helps you to see what that other place is. So we're going to do 3 breakouts, one after the other. I'm going to ask our team if they can do that, to put you in groups of 3, because when we're groups of 2, the third person tends to help create another dynamic. Don't spend a lot of time introducing yourselves because it's very short. I'm giving you 3 minutes. And I want you just to try and talk about your education system in your country, the one you know, the one you look, where your kids are, if you have kids, or the one you've been through, the one you read about. What's working well? What's not working well? Obviously, 3 minutes, you have 1 minute each. What can be done to change it? Who should drive the change? Just listen carefully to yourselves as you're listening to other people, and pay attention to what's happening inside of you. How are you reacting to what they're saying? Are you saying, oh, that guy's so conservative, or what rubbish, or, listen to yourself, listen to them, and we'll come back in 3 minutes. Is that okay, team? Can we do that?
Yes, we definitely can. Gurmeet will help to launch the breakout room.
Do I launch it now?
And yeah, maybe before you go into the breakout room, you want to screen capture the 3 questions? Okay, yeah, we can begin now, Gurmeet.
Or we can put it on the chat maybe.
MR, your both accounts are in room 1.
Gurmeet?
Yes.
I think it was supposed to be groups of 3 people in a room.
Oh, 3 in a room. I thought it was group.
No.
Shit. Okay, let me just close it for a while.
Yeah, close and bring back everyone and just apologize.
Apologies, it was supposed to be groups of 3. All right, let me just create. There might be rooms with 4, Jug, is that okay?
Yeah, Ivan, is that okay? There'll be, I think, 1 or 2 rooms with 4. And so 3 in a group, yeah?
Okay. All right, in general, okay, give me a second. Huh?
Ivan, I think you're muted.
Okay, I'll open it up now.
I'm saying something didn't work. We all came back.
Oh yeah, because I accidentally created only 3 rooms. It was supposed to be groups of 3. Yeah,
That's okay.
Apologies for that. I'm opening up
Okay.
now. There will be 1 room with 4 people.
Okay.
All right, you can join. Emma, both of your accounts are in room 5.
Gurmeet, need your help to put me back into the breakout.
Okay,
5.
give me a second. Don't move yet, okay? Let's see. Room. Don't move. Okay, try now. Was it enough time?
It wasn't necessarily meant time to resolve the thing. You know, you're not here. I'd like to give you the power to say, okay, this is what needs to be done, and let's change it. But I unfortunately I'm not that powerful. So it's just a chance for you to observe. I don't know if you were trying to look inside while you were listening to the others, but one thing we notice when we talk to people is the problem is always someone else has to resolve it. You know, it's often, oh, if the ministry did this, or the teachers did this, or the parents did this, or it's never if what can I do to help the system change. That often is the last place that people come, right? And all the thoughts are very interesting, but they're all quite academic. Like we were in a university, like you are, like, oh, you know, if I analyze the situation, this is the problem, blah, blah. Now we're going to try a slightly different experience. So we have 3 minutes again to our team that's organizing this. We're going to break out again in groups of 3. But if you could please put the next slide with the next question for our breakout, you're going to find that we have a very, very different perspective of how we talk about a different aspect of education. So the next question is breakout 2. What are 3 things that you received during your education that you really appreciated or valued? Like, wow, those 3 things today for me, they were great. Speak spontaneously. Don't think about it too much. And just each one, maybe take a minute, speak from your heart. What is it that you received during your education? Overall education, but school education, basically, not necessarily religious or spiritual or parent education. What did you receive in the school that you really appreciated? Can we have that next breakout with?
Yep, sure. Should I open it now, Ivan? All right, I'll be opening it now for the breakout. Okay, done. Garrett, do you need help?
Hi, everyone. So when we went to talk to these people to interview them, instead of asking them the first question, we asked them the second question. And we asked them the question, you're now going to do the third question. And what we saw was completely different. It was like an icebreaker. People suddenly connected to their experience, their heart. So they weren't anymore talking about, oh, the Ministry of Education should do this, or the teachers or the parents. They were saying, oh, these are the things that were important for me. So if they were important for me, they probably would be important for other students even today. Are they there? Okay. So let's quickly go into the third breakout, and then we'll come back and share a little bit what we experienced. So do we have the third slide and the third question? Thank you. So now we're going to go back into our groups, and we're going to say, what are 3 things we did not receive, but we would have liked to have received? What are 3 things you would have liked to receive in your education, but did not? Again, speak spontaneously. First thing that comes to your heart, to your mind, speak from your heart. Okay, let's go out back into the, what would you have liked to receive, but you didn't receive? This is the most important part. Okay, so we went into these interviews and we asked these people to think about these last two questions. And then they did, and it was a real icebreaker, because instead of us coming to them and asking them something, and you know, when you're a person asking a senior director of a school or in the ministry, or there's often a kind of like, what are you asking me? Or they're a bit serious or something like this. And now you ask them, your memories of school is like, oh, you take them back. Oh, yeah, you know, I remember this and I didn't get this, but I got that. I had the teacher that really showed me this in classroom. And from there, the discussion we had with them was soft. It was gentle. It was talking about the system, but not so hard. Yeah. So let's just have a couple of minutes just to get some feedback from you. How does the experience that you just had relate to what you might want for your kids? If you have children or you're thinking of having children, how does the fact of just thinking for a second about what you've just said relate to what you want for them, and relate to what you said in the first part about what needs to change, right? So in the first part, you're probably saying, you know, we were saying in our group that the ministry needs to be not changing every 5 years, but, you know, have a long-term North Star vision, and each ministry is trying to implement that vision. Did what you discussed now make a difference? You can show the next slide, because it has the question. Did it make a difference in your sense of what might be missing in the system today, based on your own experience? And the third question is, are we transmitting the right skills to our children? Now, it's 1:06, and I promised to finish at 1:15 in 9 minutes. So just a few comments here for somebody. Keep a clock. 4 minutes for feedback, and then we'll start to close up the talk today. Anyone have any strong feelings or want to share something? What's alive in you now to share with us about this experience? Anyone? And then I'll give you the results of the interviews in the next slide of what we discovered in the system, our sensing of the system.
Thank you, Ivan. Ivan, I have something to share. So it was really wow for me when you mentioned that, hey, instead of asking them the 3 very cognitive questions, you actually went on for something that allows the participants to speak from their hearts. Because when I went through the activity just now myself, I was thinking to myself as an educator, oh wow, those are the 3 things that I enjoy a lot. Maybe something that I can ponder about during the weekend, what I would want to deliver to my students now and also future. So I really like how the switch of those questions that you have asked, from the very cognitive one to the one that's maybe really touch the hearts and speak from your heart. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? Were you surprised at what you said?
So from my perspective is, I think we were so used to putting the responsibility on a different party, and now seeing it as what is it that we want, you know, brings that a bit more of an action, want to take action in making a change, bringing some form of difference into the system. So it was really good. It was a mindset shift in that sense.
Thank you, Divya. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but when you talk to parents, maybe some of you are still a bit young to have older children, but they're often talking about, I need my kids to get good grades and I need them to study more calculus, and to do this, I need to have more extracurriculars to get into the university. And so the parents are putting all this pressure on the kids and on the system and on the teachers and on the administrators to pump these kids. They're like Marines going through some sort of mega training course. And then they come out and they don't even know how to open a bank account or how to cook a fried egg, you know? They're like, well, what kind of education did they prepare me for? You know, or they don't know about divorce, or they don't know about, you know, heartbreak, or why didn't we discuss? I remember thinking, why did nobody ever tell me about heartbreak? You know, we could have had a course on heartbreak, like, what's it feel like? And why do people get a heartbreak? And what's it like? Now, for the last 40 years, I learned, you're projecting on your girlfriend. Well, why didn't somebody tell me about projecting when I was, you know, 18? I could have done a course. I could have avoided 3 divorces that I've had, you know. Anyone else? We have got 1 more minute to hear anyone's comments.
I would like to go. I really think that I have a nephew, and when you ask that question, very important question, what did you learn from school? It made me realize that no matter what my nephew learns in school, I must make sure that he learns these things, that it is my responsibility to bring these things into his education, and I must make sure it happens for him, because I think this is important, because I took that away from school. So thanks for asking me that question. It really, like Divya was saying, it's like a paradigm mindset shift. I like that.
Thank you, Gurpreet. So as I'm Swiss, my nationality is Swiss, I have to be punctual. So it's now 10 minutes past, and 1 hour and 10 we've spent. So if we can go to the next slide, and I'll begin to close up so Jack can take us into the question and answer session. So the results of our interview. So how did we do this? We sat in a circle, all the 20 people, and we put on pieces of paper the names of the stakeholder, teachers, students, each had a paper. And one by one, whenever the group felt ready, like our group, you would step onto one of those. So like a teacher. So you didn't have to say who it was. I interviewed this teacher, and what I got from that interview was this, and you'd share it. So in 2 hours, each of us was able to present 6, 8, 10 interviews to the rest of the group, very short, sort of encapsulated summaries. And we were able to listen to the whole system. Like if you could tune into the minds of all these people and hear all their chatters at the same time, you know, like you see in some of these movies that somebody has the power to listen to other people's thoughts. And what came out, this is the results of the interviews. There is a general sense of suffering and discomfort in the education system in Portugal. There is no doubt in my mind. This wasn't scientific. I didn't do a survey with the polling company. And anyway, the polling companies don't always get it right, as we saw with Trump, but this was us going in and sensing. And what did we sense? Pain, suffering. We sensed that the upper echelons, the ministries, even the administrators are kind of looking to the forward. Oh, we're going to go in that direction, and not really looking at what's happening here now, not really taking care of how the teachers are feeling, how the parents are feeling, how the students are feeling, right? And we have that a lot in our life, you know, instead of dealing with the problem now, we go out to the discotheque or we do some activity that, you know, takes us away from having to deal with pain and suffering, okay? People frustrated that they cannot make change, they cannot get things, how do we start? Where do we start, okay? And a fear of being a change maker, you know, if I try to change it, I'm gonna, you know, I could get demoted or fired, or you know, nobody will listen to me, and it's not going to go anywhere. But many people wanting to bring change. One of the things I heard in my meetings here today is a sense of, you know, yeah, we do need all systems need change. All systems, your family, your couple, you can always look at them like we've done now, and you can sense what's the health of my system, and how could we maybe, if we're aware that certain things are not working that well, we don't manage to come and sit down at dinner at the same time. So it'd be nice for us to find a way that we could maybe not all sit down at the same time, but we could cook together or do something else that, you know, leads us towards a healthier system. And then we sense that there were some islands of well-being in the system, mainly private schools and mainly holistic and homeschooling structures, where people felt, yeah, we're quite happy with what we got. So there were places where there were either more resources, less stress, or more tailored to people saying, we've designed the thing that we want for our kids, for our system, for our teachers. Okay, so it wasn't all without hope. This is a picture of us doing the 4D mapping, where I told you that, you know, our group, This is actually one of our members with another group modeling our story, modeling our issues. And so the people sit and form different positions. They've got a name tag that says, I'm the ministry, I'm the parents, I'm the whatever. And that's Otto Scharmer in the suit, sort of in the 2/3 to the right, with his arm pointing to somebody. Now, if we can go to the next, and he's the main person of Theory U, the main professor. And if we go now to the next meeting, and this is a 3D. So you just take objects that kids would have in the school, and so here we took whatever we had, ball of string, and each of we have a south, north, east, and west, and we have a center, and each of those objects, to the people, maybe 3 or 4 people that created this 3D sculpture, has a symbol. So the white cage, I think, was the schools, and the white ball of wool was maybe the teachers, and we position them in relation to one another and in relation to north, east, south, and west as we feel the system today. It's not a right or a wrong, it's just, and you can do this with your family, you can do this with your club, your organization, your company, okay? This is what it feels like today. It feels like the boss is too dominant, or it feels like the colleagues are always strife. How do I show colleagues always in strife? Well, I put a red color and I squish it a little bit, and that means strife. And everybody around goes, yeah, I agree with that. Or somebody says, no, I would put that a little bit more here, closer to the other colleagues who are not fighting, because I think they go together. So that's a 3D mapping. And next slide, please. So what shifted in us, the group, during this exercise? So normally people that are involved in mindfulness in education speak a language, something like this. We're going to go into the school and we're going to teach mindfulness courses, and we're going to raise their consciousness. And what does that sound like? That sounds like the guys who got in the ships in Spain and Portugal and went to Latin America and said, we're going to teach these savages what civilization is about, right? It's sort of similar. It's kind of a little bit arrogant, like, well, we meditate, we're mindful, and we're going to go to help those people to raise their consciousness. And I kept saying to the group, that doesn't sound right, And after our experience with this Theory U, our attitude had changed. We wanted to go into the schools and help those people flourish. Help them flourish by looking at their system, sensing what's not working, and giving them the tools, such as Theory U, mindfulness, and there are others, to be able to begin to change their systems from within, by themselves, with their own intuition, their own frustrations, and their own effort. Next slide, please. And what did we experience as a group? Because that was also very, very beautiful, what we really applying this Theory U concept to us as a group, wanting to enact social change. If we want to go into the education system and help it to change, help it to be healthier, we're actually so activists, a little bit like Gurpreet, Instead of using my mindfulness as a teacher just to sit in my classroom because my students frustrate me and my school headmaster frustrates me and life frustrates me, and so I have to meditate every day and be mindful just to not kill somebody. Now I'm going to use my mindfulness to sense how is it that I could go into my system, bring other teachers and parents and students together and help us do a process like the one Ivan's just told us about with Theory U, so that we look at our system, and so that together as a group, as a team, we identify what's not working and begin to think how we can start to make the small changes that would make a difference. But first, we have to also make differences in the way we work as a team. And this is what we noticed happening with us. We as a team changed. We formed a very solid group. And here are some of the things that we learned. We learned to listen actively and deeply. I thought I was a good listener. Not a good listener. A lot to learn. And I've learned a little bit. To focus on what we can learn and not on what we already know. I remember working for a Japanese company many years ago, and the Japanese gentleman would come into the room with all the Europeans and he wouldn't say a word. And at the end, he knew everything that everybody had to say, and nobody knew anything what he knew, you know? So it's using an opportunity to listen, because you already know what you know. So try and learn from other people. Welcome discomfort. That's something that in groups, it's like when somebody says, how are you? Oh, I'm okay. I'm great. Nobody ever says, I'm really not so well, you know? I'm feeling down, I'm feeling hurting, and something like that. So discomfort is a key indicator. We need to welcome it in our work because it's telling us that something's not right, that we need to listen to it. Maybe we just need to adjust one little tap, 1 degree, but the water's too hot or too cold, and it just needs to be a little bit different for that one person, because when it is for that one person, it doesn't matter for the rest, but for that one person, it makes all the difference. And then there's a greater harmony in the group. To use collective intelligence, always. I mean, I remember in this group, we started talking not about mindfulness and education, but the problem I was having with my landlord or my builder or this. Guys, I really need to bring this into the group. And there was space for that. We would meditate always a few minutes before we started our meetings. We would do a check-in and a check-out, which are really, really important mindfulness tools. How do you come to this meeting today? What is, oh, I almost hit a car and I'm agitated and I'm frustrated. Give that person a little bit of time to bring that into the group, to receive empathy, to come down, and they will then be able to become a better participant in the group, in the discussion. Otherwise, they'll probably say, I don't agree with you. Yeah, no, I don't agree. No. Why? Not because they maybe don't agree, but just because they're having a bad day. And nobody then understands it. It creates friction in the group and so on. To be able to receive without immediate suggestion. We gave the example of that earlier, you know? Oh, I had this problem. Oh, I had that problem last week and I did this and this and it solved it. That's what you should do. Why? Sometimes the problem just goes away by itself and you can just stay calm and you don't need to do anything. And so now you've contributed and made something that maybe that person didn't even want any suggestion. They just wanted mostly somebody to say, wow, that's really challenging that you had to deal with that on top of what you just said you had to deal with yesterday. Wow, is there anything I can do to help? I'm here, you know? So, and the other thing is to learn to weave. You know, when David says something, and I'm the next one to speak, not to jump 5,000 miles to another subject on another planet, but to say, I'm going to take something from what David said, which felt relevant to me, and I'd like to weave that. So I'm thinking now of the conversation we're having, I'm thinking of the intention we have, I'm thinking of the time we have, and I want to weave on top of what he said so that we're actually at the end got some kind of a fabric that represents the work that we've all been doing. And I think the last thing that's really important, I learned it in the army when I did the Swiss Army, is that you always have to take the weakest person in any situation. And sometimes weak is physical, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's, you know, something else. You have to take them with you, because otherwise that weakest person who couldn't jump over the wall or who couldn't stand the pressure is probably going to result in the rest of your team getting terminated, you know? So it's important at the end of your meeting, has everybody been heard? Does everybody feel they've been listened to? And that was a really important part of our experience. Can we go on to the next slide, please? And I've passed the time, it's 1:23. So I'm sorry, Jack, I'll finish. I think this is the last one. So this is the question that Otto Scharmer, who's the main professor, proponent of theory, uses. Isn't there a way to break the patterns of the past, which we were also talking about when we were in our groups of education, break the patterns of the past and tune into our highest future possibility, which is what we did when we thought, what did I get that was best? What did I not get that I would like? And begin to operate from that place. And I end the presentation there. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ivan. That was brilliant. Time is our enemy, really. Anyway, whatever you are delivering to us, actually, we need a 3-week program with you, you know, to really effectively and I mean to really benefit from it. But thank you so much. So I think we have maybe just one or two questions that we can take looking at the time, because I'd like to end it on time at 4:30. And while we open the floor to questions, Gurmeet will launch the poll, just simple 2 questions, and really appreciate your feedback on that. Right, so please shoot if you have questions.
Oh, this is very humiliating. What if I get only pores?
So far, Ivan, you don't have anything to.
Then I'll have to start the presentation all over again. So you better give me excellent, or I will start the presentation all over again.
But you need to hear us, Ivan.
Right.
Anyone with any question at all? I think my biggest takeaway, Ivan, I come back to what you said right in the beginning. When you are stuck, it's no longer to be a victim, but to take positive action. So for me, that sums up this whole session.
Okay, I think I'll end the polling now.
Thank you, Gurmeet.
All right.
I have a question if no one else does. Ivan, what was the hardest part about working with that group of 20 people? I was just trying to imagine doing it, and what was the biggest challenge that you had?
Learning to accept dissatisfaction, sadness as a positive input in the group. You know, people don't want to say, you hurt my feelings, I didn't feel listened to. So they touch it in a slightly other, you know, they say, I'm feeling a little bit sad, you know, about the meeting we had yesterday. You've got to hold on to that. You got to say, look, let's give a few minutes to that. Is anyone else feeling sad about some aspect of the meeting tomorrow? You don't have to go into it, but just let's stay with that. So something's not working here. How could we maybe, what is it that we could maybe do differently? How could we incorporate that as a sign that something's not quite in equilibrium here? You know, that's something we don't work a lot with in our education with kids. Now schools are introducing socio-emotional skills. It's SEL. It's even much more accepted than mindfulness. And it's about, you know, looking and recognizing what you're feeling. I was talking about in our group. So are you feeling fear? Are you feeling anger? Are you feeling sadness? Often we mix them all up and we don't know. How do I express that to people without it seeming like a demand or a criticism? How do I listen to somebody else who is expressing it to me? How do I express empathy? All of these issues are around, you know, mindfulness and socio-emotional communication.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's 4:30 now, so we have come to the end. I'd like to really give a big, huge round of applause and thank you to Ivan for coming to Malaysia today with us virtually to deliver this wonderful session. All our hearts are going out to you. And if you were physically in front of us,
put my mask back on now to go outside.
yeah, if you were physically here with us, you'll probably be receiving a standing ovation. And yeah, Ivan, really heartfelt thanks. So thank you to everyone. Also for those who tuned in for this session of Fill My Cup. Catch the next one. Chintek is back by popular demand, and he will be doing a session on what employers are looking for in the 21st century talent. So he will be doing that. More details will come your way through a poster. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and a special public announcement to my team. Take a 5 minutes break. We will start the meeting at 4:35. Right? Take care. God bless all of you, and